Hello again, everybody. This is Craig Evans of Autism Hangout, and thank you for tuning into this Autism Hangout special report. Folks, there's a revolution underway being brought to you by Apple Computer. No, it's not the iPhone, it's the iPad that's making headlines in autism circles. Today's guest is kicking off a series of interviews, and I'll be making with those reporting positive effects and outcomes with iPads and autism. So Autism Hangout, please welcome Shannon DeRoche Rosa. Shannon, it's awful nice to have you here.
It's great to be here.
All right, now, you didn't set out to become an iPad advocate, I know that. But you and your son Leo discovered how this device could help Leo connect to the world. Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Sure. We'd actually bought him an iPod Touch because we had heard from people that there were a number of apps that were great for kids with autism. And so we got that and we tried it out, and it was cool. You know, it was kind of not a whole lot different from when you play on the computer in terms of his engagement, but it was cool and it was portable and it was something that he liked. And so people started talking about the iPad when that came out, and I'm not an early adopter kind of person because I like for the kinks to be worked out, and I'm also cheap. So, frugal, I believe, is the term.
Okay.
My dad always said cheap. But so I won an iPad, though, in a school raffle, and it was with a $5 ticket, and so I was very excited about it because, you know, it's one of those things that I knew it was cool, I knew it was neat, I knew it was different, but because, you know, I just couldn't get myself to go there and get it. So I screamed when they called me and said that I won the iPad. I was so excited, and I brought it home and I showed it to Leo, and he just dove in. It was amazing.
B, 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 E, E, B.
How old is Leo?
Leo is 9.
Okay.
10 in a couple months.
And is he speaking now or is he apraxic?
He is he's not conversational. We say that he speaks fluent requesting.
I got
So
you.
he will tell you what he wants.
Okay.
Definitely. And so the kinds of apps that have been good for him are less things like the AAC devices that help kids communicate. There are so many of those, and most of them are great. I've tried out most of them, even though they're not what Leo needs right now. But the things that have been great for him are more of the educational apps and sight reading apps, and the things that just allow him to spontaneously engage with his environment and play and do things that he just never was able to do in a self-directed way before because he'd always needed some kind of one-to-one guidance. Dude?
B, O, W, L, B, O, W, L, bull.
Can you make them? There they go.
Now, is he a technophile? I mean, did you put it in front of him and he kind of knew how to adapt to it? Or tell us how that worked when you first brought it home.
Well, what I did is I got it and I brought it home and I immediately went online and started looking up good apps for kids with autism and good early learning apps, and I found a bunch of articles that had them. There's a really great site called momswithapps.com, and it's a bunch of parents who get together who develop apps, and all these sites had recommendations, so I downloaded a bunch of them and started letting them go, and it was just, I really couldn't believe it, because that's the thing with our kids. We know that they're smart. The issue is trying to find a way to go in there and let them express their unique intelligence. And this is something that Leo has found is a gateway for him. I mean, he's able to do things and show me things that, one of the apps is called First Words, and he can go right in there and drag around all these letters to form a word. It then says the word, it repeats it for a huge sequence of words, and since he's a visual learner, he's not had a whole lot of success with phonics, but with first words, he's starting to do the kind of sight reading that we've been trying for a while, and it's reinforcing that beautifully.
Now, a lot of these apps that work for the iPad were actually developed for either the iPod or the iPhone. Why, in this particular case, did the iPad work better than the iPod for you?
Well, in Leo's case, he has problems with fine motor skills, so he can't manipulate his fingers with a high degree of accuracy and skill on a smaller scale that the iPod requires. He can do it, but it's just not the same for him, and he finds it so much easier to manipulate the iPad because of this larger scale of the screen. And so that large-scale touch-based interface is not something that had ever really been available in this kind of format for consumers. That in this kind of accessibility, touch screens have always been really expensive and not portable.
Right. Well, I know that you mentioned you started to download a lot of the apps that were out there.
Yeah.
How did you determine what is a hit versus what is a miss with Leo? Was it all a self-selecting thing, or did you notice some things?
Well, he actually, again, he's doing something that he had not done before, that we've never really seen him do before, which is to explore. And because the interface made it so easy, you just tap, swipe, and move around between the screens to different apps. It's a pretty intuitive setup, and he was able to go and explore, and I could see that he would just keep going back to certain apps, like First Words and Shape Builder and I Write Words and like Tappy Tunes and all these kinds of, and also there's another one that is a social stories app called Stories to Learn, where we actually make interactive audio-enabled stories about him and his day and things he does, and he loves that because it's all about him.
Yeah. Before we go too much further, you've mentioned a lot of apps that you've tried and had success with. And I know that you have a blog, and I know that you've written on this blog about some of the more successful apps. So let's give that address right now so folks can follow up after this video.
Okay. My personal blog is www.squidalicious.com, which is a name from 2003. Those of you who blog, it's a little odd. But I also write for blogher.com on parenting kids with special needs. And I also write for the Thinking Person's Guide to Autism. I'm one of the founders and editors of that site, and we cover this on all those sites.
Now, I know that you've got a book coming out, too. Do you care to talk a moment about your book?
Oh, about the Thinking Person's Guide to Autism, sure. What we've done is there's four of us, me, Jennifer Bide-Myers, Liz Dietz, and Emily Willingham, who's our science editor. And we basically are getting together and creating the website and the book based on the website that we wish had been available when our kids with autism were first diagnosed. Basically informed, we're trying to let people make informed decisions because there's a lot of noise out there, as I'm sure most parents who are experienced know. Most parents have been around for a while, but when you're raw and new and confused and sometimes a little desperate, it's hard to know what information to trust. So we're trying to provide more evidence-based approaches, not exclusively, but the kind of unbiased information that parents can really use.
Well, we all go through that stage when we find out our kids are on the spectrum.
Yes.
Let's get back to iPad for a minute.
Sure.
It worked with Leo. If a parent is out there considering, is an iPad going to be right for my kid, could you talk a little bit about what criteria a parent should be looking at before they introduce a $500 iPad to their child?
Well, what I do tell people to do is to call, if they have an Apple store in their neighborhood, I would recommend calling up the store, asking them when their slow times are, and then seeing if you can bring your kid down to their iPad demonstration table and see how they react to it. I know that your child needs to have some fine motor skills. So if they're going to be driving it themselves, I know that people are making adaptive devices for it. But my friend whose son has cerebral palsy has been trying to use it, and he has definitely been very interested in it because it is easier for him to use than a lot of other devices. But motor skills are important, and I really think a lot of it has to do with interest, because it does work on so many levels. I mean, Leo is using it at a much more basic level than I think a lot of kids do, including his sisters, but he's still fully engaged and invested.
Now, he's been using this as a communications tool and a learning tool. Does he get a chance to play on it too?
Yeah, that's what we just absolutely love about it, because a lot of children with autism have a hard time knowing what to do with any unstructured time. And so this allows Leo to direct that. You can, before we worked in an ABA program trying to set him up with all of these schedule books and things and options for playing, and that did work. It works wonderfully, but he was driving that partially, but we had to structure it with the iPad. He can decide what to do whenever he wants to, and it's already set up and ready to go.
Are you restricting any time? I mean, some people looked at television with neurotypicals as being a babysitter. How do you view this device and his free time?
Well, it's been so difficult for Leo to find a way to engage himself independently that's the least of my worries.
Okay.
And he's pretty self-directed about it. He's not going to play with it for hours on end. He usually plays with it for about 20 to 30 minutes at a time, if that. Yeah.
Okay. Shannon, this has been absolutely delightful. I so appreciate you coming on Autism Hangout and sharing your story.
Sure, anytime.
Well, we're all looking for different things that we can use to not only help connect our kids with reality, but to help our kids develop their own sense of interest and their own independence. I'm going to be talking to some software manufacturers for the iPad, as well as other people like you that have had positive experiences, because this seems to be a very, very timely tool. So, once again, I know there's some people in the audience that are going to want to follow some of your exploits, so could we give your blog web addresses again where they can come and follow you?
Sure. The Thinking Person's Guide to Autism is at www.thinkingautismguide.com. My personal blog is at Squidalicious. It's SQUIDALICOUS.com. And I also write for blogher.com on parenting kids with special needs.
Shannon, thank you again for coming in and talking to us today.
It's my pleasure.
And thank you, Autism Hangout. I'll be back again soon with another one of these informative How to Thrive with Autism programs very soon. Thank you.